I know some people are born to shine. I just didn't realize some people are born to be used as reflectors. My name's Eliza. I'm 34 now, living in Indiana, and I've spent most of my life being the background noise in someone else's success story. Specifically, my older sister, Nadine's. She's the kind of person who can walk into a room and have people listening before she even opens her mouth. She's got that voice, the kind that makes you feel like you've known her forever. She's been on local news panels, hosted podcasts, even did a TEDx talk that went semi-viral last year. And guess who wrote most of it? Me. I've always been a writer. Quiet, awkward, observant. As a kid, I filled up notebooks with stories, poems, and things I was too scared to say out loud. Writing was my way of making sense of a world that often made me feel like I didn't belong. My parents used to joke, "Eliza's the quiet one. Nadine's the star." And that stuck. Hard. Nadine would take my lines, literal sentences I scribbled in my journal or said out loud in passing, and spin them into gold on stage. And every time she did, people applauded like she'd pulled those words from the heavens, never mind that they were mine. The worst part? I let it happen. For years, we grew up in a small town outside Bloomington. My parents ran a catering business. Nothing fancy, but enough to keep the lights on. Nadine was always front and center. School debates, choir solos, interviews in the local paper. I was usually in the back, washing dishes or fixing her PowerPoint slides. I remember one Christmas, I gave her a little handmade book filled with quotes and short reflections I'd written. She teared up when she opened it. 3 months later, she used 2 of those quotes in a speech at a nonprofit gala. Never mentioned me, not once. Still, I kept writing, and she kept taking. When I graduated with a journalism degree and landed a job at a local radio station as a script editor, I thought things might shift. I had my own space, my own career. But Nadine kept calling. "Just read over this paragraph." Or, "Can you help me shape this ending?" I told myself it was harmless, that she was family, that it didn't matter if I got credit. But it started to eat at me. Last spring, something snapped. Nadine had been invited to deliver a keynote at a state educators summit. Big event. Lots of media coverage. She called me in a panic 2 weeks before. "Eliza, I need something powerful," she said. "You know how I get stuck under pressure." I stayed up 3 nights writing her speech. Personal anecdotes, subtle humor, a closing line that honestly made even me tear up when I reread it. She thanked me with a Starbucks gift card and a smiley emoji. The speech blew up. It got featured on NPR. People shared it online with hashtags like #voice of our generation. That's when I lost it. Not publicly. Not yet. But something inside me broke. I tried talking to my mom about it, just expressing how small I felt. Her response? "Eliza, you should be proud. You're helping her shine." Then she added the line that still rings in my ears. "You're only good when you're quiet." That was the moment I realized. They never expected me to have a voice of my own. They liked me muted. Useful, but invisible. I told myself I'd stop. No more writing for her. No more feeding a fire that only ever burned me. But last week, something changed. I got an email from my station manager. He'd just watched Nadine's latest viral video. "Crazy coincidence," he said. "She used that exact line you pitched for our new community campaign. Except, I never sent that line to anyone but her. And now my manager thinks I'm the one plagiarizing her." That's when I realized Nadine didn't just steal my words. She might have just stolen my job. So there I was, sitting in the break room of the station, holding my coffee like it was the only thing keeping me from screaming, while my manager casually accused me of stealing my sister's work. It would have been funny if it didn't hurt so damn much. I'd written that campaign line months ago, word for word. I'd pitched it in a draft meeting, but I hadn't submitted it officially yet. We were still deciding between slogans. And in the meantime, I had emailed it to Nadine. Just as a side note, "Hey, what do you think?" type of thing. She liked it. Clearly. And now it was on a national video, rolling under her name with soft piano music and a million likes. That night, I stared at my ceiling until morning. Every version of every conversation I wanted to have played in my head. But when I finally texted Nadine, simple, short, direct. "Did you use that line I shared?" Her reply came 2 hours later. "Eliza, you're being overly sensitive. I adapted it. Don't make this weird." That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just a brush off like I was some clingy fan, not the person who had ghostwritten half her brand. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The next week at work was a blur. People started whispering. I could feel it. The way they looked at me like I was trying to ride my sister's coattails and got caught. I kept my head down, but inside I was unraveling. To make things worse, my mom called me out of the blue. "I saw Nadine's latest speech. You should call her and congratulate her." I said nothing. "Eliza, don't be petty. You should be proud. She's doing great things." That word again. Proud. I used to be. I used to think it was enough just to know I helped. But now, it just felt like I was being erased. I finally broke down over dinner with Miles, my only real friend at the station. He used to work in the sound booth for Nadine's old podcast before she leveled up and left us small-time folks behind. "She's been doing this forever," he said, shaking his head. "You think she wrote her first 5 episodes alone? You basically outlined the entire series." I blinked. "You knew?" He nodded. "You weren't the only one she leaned on. She just made sure none of us ever spoke up." I think that's when it all truly clicked. It wasn't just me. Nadine built a platform using bits and pieces of everyone around her. People like me. People who didn't think their words mattered. Until she used them. The real gut punch? Miles had a saved folder. Voice memos, email drafts, even unedited scripts. Many with my handwriting on them. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. But that's when the idea sparked. Quiet at first, then steady. If she could build an empire on our silence, what would happen if we finally spoke? Miles offered to help. "Let's make something of your own. Something raw. Something real." So we did. We stayed up late in the production room, piecing together old clips, original recordings, voice memos with timestamps. I started writing again, this time for myself. Honest, unfiltered thoughts about what it feels like to be the echo, not the voice. We called it The Other Voice. It was supposed to be a quiet little podcast. Just for me. Maybe 10 people would listen. Maybe it'd help me feel like I mattered again. But then, it took off. And 3 weeks later, I got a call from a national radio show. "Hi, Eliza. We love your work. We're doing a special on invisible creators. We'd like to bring you on, alongside a few others in the industry, including your sister." My heart stopped. They didn't know we were related. I didn't correct them. I just said, "Yeah, I think it's time I spoke." There's a specific kind of rage that comes when someone takes your pain, polishes it, and wears it like a crown. After agreeing to the interview, I barely slept. I paced the floor of my apartment, rehearsing every possible version of what I might say. Would I call her out directly? Would I keep it vague? What if she denied everything? Miles told me to trust myself. You don't owe anyone a perfect performance. You owe yourself the truth. When the day came, I arrived at the station early. Nadine was already in the green room, smiling like she was running for office. She looked right at me and said, "Eliza, I didn't know you'd be here. What a surprise." Like I hadn't sent her a confirmation email. We barely spoke after that. I could feel the tension crackling in the room, like a storm waiting to hit. The host was warm, professional. He introduced us as 2 women using their voices to change the narrative. I almost laughed out loud. For the first half of the show, we danced around each other. Nadine gave polished answers about empowerment and finding your why. I stayed quiet, biding my time, letting her shine, like I always had. Then came the moment. The host turned to me. Eliza, your podcast has touched a lot of people. Can you tell us how it came to be? I looked at Nadine. She wasn't even pretending to be nervous. So I spoke. Slowly, clearly, no shaking. I started the other voice because I got tired of watching someone else tell my stories. The host blinked. Could you clarify? I wrote speeches, essays, scripts, some personal, some professional. They were mine. And I watched them get applauded, under someone else's name. Silence. Nadine let out a tight laugh. That's quite the accusation. I turned to her, finally facing her head on. You took my pain, Nadine, and you turned it into punchlines and standing ovations. You didn't even ask. Her face went stiff. She opened her mouth to respond, but the host cut in, clearly rattled. We're going to take a short break. But the mics didn't cut. They were still hot. And Nadine, not realizing that, muttered under her breath. God, she was fine with it when no one knew her name. You could hear a pin drop. We came back from break in stunned silence. The producer's face had gone pale. The chat online was exploding. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. The audio went viral that night. My inbox flooded. Strangers, colleagues, even a few extended family members who I hadn't spoken to in years. They all reached out. Some offered support. Some just wrote, "Me too." But that twist, that mic not cutting, that wasn't even the part that shattered me. It was what happened the next morning. I woke up to a message from my mom. You humiliated your sister on live radio. I hope you're happy. No. Are you okay? No. Is it true? Just that. It felt like getting stabbed in the chest by someone you thought might finally hug you. I didn't respond. I couldn't. But I'll be honest. Beneath the anger, beneath the adrenaline, there was a small part of me that still hurt. That still wanted someone to say, Eliza, you were right to speak. And if you've ever had your voice stolen, your art, your words, your story, I want you to know, I see you. Even if no one else does. Especially if no one else does. You're not invisible. You were never meant to be. It's weird how quiet revenge can be. I didn't slam doors. I didn't scream. I didn't write a takedown post online. I just started moving. Quietly. Steadily. Like someone who had finally stopped waiting for permission. After the interview aired, after that hot mic moment lit up social media like wildfire, Nadine vanished. She deactivated her Instagram, canceled 2 speaking events. Her publicist released a vague statement about deep personal reflection. I didn't say a word. Not publicly. I went back to work. But things had changed. People at the station looked at me differently now. Not like I was a shadow behind someone else's spotlight, but like I had my own damn wattage. Listeners started requesting more of my writing. A few even wrote in to say they'd stopped following Nadine and started following me. Still, I didn't trust the ground yet. I'd lived too long with it crumbling under me. So I kept my head down and made plans. Miles and I expanded The Other Voice. We added a second series, Ghostwriters Anonymous, where people could share their own stories of being erased, rewritten, or silenced. We vetted everything, changed names, but the impact? It was raw, electric. By week 4, we had a listener base bigger than Nadine's peak numbers. That's when the emails started. From her agent, her lawyer, then her. First it was just, can we talk? Then, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. And finally, you've made your point. Are you happy now? I didn't answer. I wasn't doing this for a point. I was doing this to breathe. But then came something I didn't expect. A letter. A real physical letter, on expensive stationery, from the National Speaking Alliance. They wanted to recognize Nadine with a Lifetime Achievement Award. I almost laughed. But the next line stopped me cold. We understand you were instrumental in developing some of her early work. We'd like to invite you to present the award. At first, I thought it was a joke. But the letter was real. So was the RSVP card and the invite list, packed with journalists, editors, donors, and every person who ever told me to stay quiet so someone else could be louder. Miles stared at me across our cluttered workspace. "You gonna go?" I nodded. "Oh, I'm going, but not to clap." So I prepared, not with fire, with facts. I collected every time-stamped email, every manuscript, every voice memo she'd left me begging for just a few lines. I printed it all and tucked it into a single manila folder labeled Truth. The night of the gala, I wore a deep blue dress, one I bought myself. Not borrowed, not secondhand. Mine. Nadine was already there, all smiles and waves, holding court like the queen of vulnerability. I kept to the back until my name was called. Presenting tonight's award, Eliza Moore. As I stepped onto that stage, I looked straight at her. Her smile froze. Just for a second. I took a breath. Tonight, we're here to celebrate a voice that has moved many. But before we do, I'd like to read an excerpt, something that was never meant to be shared, but was taken anyway. And then I read it. A piece I wrote in college, about surviving grief after our dad died. Nadine used it, word for word, in her second TED Talk. Claimed it as her own. The room was silent. I held up the folder. These are mine. Every page, every line she built her brand on. You gave her an award for surviving storms I walked her through. And then I walked off stage. No mic drop. Just silence. The next morning, I got a call. From a producer. Not for a podcast. Not for a speaking gig. For a publishing deal. But here's the twist. The editor? The same woman who once told me I didn't have the kind of voice people remembered. The one who chose Nadine over me years ago. And now? She said, "I was wrong. You don't just have a voice, Eliza. You've got thunder." And maybe the wildest part? I didn't feel triumphant. I felt cracked open. Like all the noise had cleared, and for the first time, I was hearing myself. So if you've ever been told your story is only valuable when someone else tells it louder, please trust me. Speak anyway. You never know who's finally ready to listen. They say revenge is loud, but healing? Healing whispers. After that night at the gala, the world around Nadine shifted fast, and not in her favor. Within days, her sponsors pulled out. 3 of her signature talks were flagged by speechwriters online for similarities to published works, including mine. The irony? The more she tried to deny it, the more people started digging. But I wasn't watching it like some gleeful spectator. I was grieving, in a strange way. Because what no one tells you is, when someone builds their identity using pieces of yours, you don't just lose credit. You lose history. You lose the version of you that thought they'd never do that. For weeks, Nadine didn't say a word. No apology, no lawsuit, no attempt at resolution. Until I got the envelope. No stamp. Just slipped under my door one gray Thursday morning. Inside? A check, $3,200, and a sticky note. For the old journals. I know I can't give you back the rest. That's it. It made me sick to look at. Like she thought a couple grand could undo years of theft, of being made invisible. I ripped the check in half, tossed it, and sat down to write something real. Something for me. A month later, the other voice landed a syndication deal. We didn't just tell stories anymore. We paid contributors. We credited every line. We featured essays from people who had spent years being the assistant, the helper, the ghost. And we put their names first. Meanwhile, Nadine tried to stage a comeback. She posted a video, crying, shaky, framed in soft light, talking about miscommunication, family wounds, and cancel culture. But the comments were brutal. Not because she was crying, because no one believed the tears belonged to her. By year's end, she'd disappeared from every major platform. I heard she moved back to our hometown, teaches public speaking at a local community center now. Poetic, in a way. As for me, I stood on a national stage last month, not presenting an award, not introducing someone else. Just me, reading my own words. When I walked off, someone in the front row grabbed my hand and said, "Your voice sounds like mine." And that's when I knew this was never about revenge. It was about returning to myself, taking back my name, my story, my silence, and choosing what to do with it. Because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is stand up and speak in your own voice. And when you do, no one can take that from you again. Lessons learned. Silence isn't always strength. Sometimes it's a warning sign. The real power comes when you learn the difference and choose to speak anyway. If you've ever had your story stolen or your truth ignored, I'd love to hear what helped you through it. Drop it in the comments if you're up for it. And if this story hit home, you know where the follow button is. We're not alone. Not anymore.